Hey! Hey! Man, this place is way too loud. Raindrop. Students, do you love school? Are you learning? Say you'll never ever stop. Keep reaching, keep striving, keep climbing till we get to the top. Yeah! Hey! Word? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Hey! Hey! Ho! Hey! Ho! Show me 4, 3, 2, and 1. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first week of virtual school. We are going to keep it very simple. I know you guys do not have a lot of your supplies at home. Neither do I. But I figure we can at least get some reading and some writing done this week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the lesson. And then I'm going to show some things on the video so that you all can read along with me, so that you can see the assignment that I want you to complete, and so that you can go ahead and do the writing that goes along with the reading. As you all know, we have been reading 2 different chapter books over the past couple of months. So we're going to kind of seesaw back and forth. The first book we're going to pick up with is Because of Winn-Dixie. I know you guys are missing Opal, and you're missing Winn-Dixie and the preacher. So we're going to pick up where we left off on that book. Next week, we'll go back to One Crazy Summer and find out what Delphine and Vanetta and Fern are up to. Sound okay? All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I hope that everyone logs in every week, that you get your assignments. Parents, if there are ever any questions, any concerns, anything you need to talk to me about regarding the lessons, you all should have my number. Please don't hesitate to reach out. My students, my babies, my kitties, I miss you guys. Hopefully this kind of makes up for some face-to-face time that we are missing in the classroom. But I hope that everyone logs in. I hope that everyone is able to read along, complete your assignments. When we do get back to school, we're going to be having that quiz I talked about on the first 10 chapters of Because of Winn-Dixie. So I hope everyone remembers everything that we've read so far. We're going to kind of refresh what we've gone over. And then I'm going to read today the next 2 chapters. All right. So I will talk to you guys soon. Let's get the day started. Okay, before we get started with our reading for today, Because of Winn-Dixie, we are going to go over a few of vocabulary words that you're going to hear in this story. I want to make sure that you all understand exactly what these words mean so that you can better understand and follow along with the reading. Word number 1 is explained. You'll see here that the word explained has a suffix at the end, ed. Who remembers what ed means? Yes, it means that something happened in the past. The word explained means to make an idea, situation, or problem clear to someone by describing it in more detail. An example of the word explained is Brooklyn explained how to play the card game to Kamari. Turn to someone that you are sitting there with and use the word explained in a sentence. Word number 2 are actually 2 words, green thumb. I know that sounds silly, and that's because it's an idiom. If you remember when we studied idioms, you'll note that these are figures of speech that sound silly because they don't necessarily mean exactly what it says. So no, I did not dip my thumb into green paint. A green thumb is actually a natural talent for growing plants. And here's an example. When I saw Camille's garden, I knew she had been born with a green thumb. You try it now. Use it in a sentence. Word number 3 is whining. You'll see again here that we have another suffix. This time, the suffix is ing. which means that something is happening right now. Whining is a long, high-pitched, complaining cry. Here's your example. Frankie's dog kept whining and scratching at the door. What's your sentence for whining? Word number 4, whimpering. Again, you'll see that ing suffix, which means that something is happening right now. The word whimpering means making a series of low, faint sounds because of fear, pain, or dissatisfaction. Your example sentence is, when Demaya heard Kari whimpering, she picked her up from the crib. You try it. What's your sentence for whimpering? Number 5 is trembling. There's that ing suffix again. This time you tell me what the ing suffix means. Very good. The word trembling means shaking because of excitement, fear, or frailty, which means weak and delicate. Here's your example. Jaden was trembling with excitement when he opened his birthday present. Now you try using it in a sentence. Word number 6, panting. I know that may sound like you're putting on your pants, but it's not actually what it means. Panting means breathing with short, quick breaths, usually from excitement or a physical activity. Here's your example. After running around the block several times, Andre was panting and out of breath. What's your sentence for panting? And finally, the last word, number 7, is pathological. That's a big word. Let's try saying that one together. Pathological. Pathological means compulsive or obsessive, which simply means something you find an irresistible urge to do. And sometimes it's against your wishes. So you may not want to do these things, but you can't seem to control yourself. You find yourself doing it over and over again. Here's an example. He has a pathological fear of spiders. So he may not want to be afraid of spiders, but when he sees one, he can't control his fear. He screams, he jumps, he runs because it's pathological. Let's try using it in a sentence. Turn to someone next to you and use the word pathological. Okay, when we last left off with Because of Winn-Dixie in Chapter 9, we found Opal riding her bike. Remember she was riding past Dunlap and Stevie Dewberry's house, and Winn-Dixie was kind of running a little bit ahead of her. And as she kept riding her bike, the boys kept yelling that her dog was headed straight for the witch's house. So Opal tried to yell his name and call him back, but he just kept running and went inside the backyard. Opal knew she had to go get him. So she carefully walked around the house to the yard, and what did she see? Not a witch, but she ended up meeting a very, very nice lady named Gloria Dump. Gloria Dump was feeding Winn-Dixie some peanut butter, and he was having the time of his life. They ended up having a very, very nice chat, and she realized that Gloria Dump was not a witch at all. She was a very nice lady who just needed some friends and someone to talk to. So we ended up making a prediction about what was going to happen in Chapter 10. We predicted that because Gloria Dump was the talkative type, that Opal would talk to her and tell her all about her life. So that's where we're going to pick up with today on Chapter 10. I told Gloria Dump everything. I told her how me and the preacher had just moved to Naomi, Florida, and how I had to leave all my friends behind. I told her about my mama leaving, and I listed out the 10 things that I knew about her. And I explained that here in Naomi, I miss mama more than I ever had in Whatley, Florida. I told her about the preacher being like a turtle, hiding all the time inside his shell. I told her about finding Winn-Dixie in the produce department and how, because of him, I became friends with Miss Franny Block and got a job working for a man named Otis at Gertrude's Pets and got invited to Sweetie Pie Thomas's birthday party. I even told Gloria Dump how Dunlap and Stevie Dewberry called her a witch, but I told her they were stupid, mean, bald-headed boys, and I didn't believe them. Not for long, anyhow. And the whole time I was talking, Gloria Dump was listening. She was nodding her head and smiling and frowning and saying things like, and, is that right? I could feel her listening with all her heart, and it felt good. You know what? She said when I was all done. What? Could it be that you got more of your mama in you than just red hair and freckles and running fast? Really? I said. Like what? Like maybe you got her green thumb. The two of us could plant something and see how it grows. Go ahead and test your thumb out. Okay, I said. What Gloria Dump picked for me to grow was a tree. Or she said it was a tree. To me, it looked more like a plant. She had me dig a hole for it and put it in the ground and pack the dirt around it tight like it was a baby, and I was tucking it into bed. What kind of tree is this? I asked Gloria Dump. It's a wait and see tree, she said. What's that mean? It means you gotta wait for it to grow up before you know what it is. Can I come back and see it tomorrow? I asked. Child, she said, as long as this is my garden, you're welcome in it. But that tree ain't going to have changed much by tomorrow. But I want to see you too, I told her. Said Gloria Dump. I ain't going nowhere. I'll be right here. I woke Winn-Dixie up then. He had peanut butter in his whiskers, and he kept yawning and stretching. He licked Gloria Dump's hand before we left, and I thanked her. That night, when the preacher was tucking me into bed, I told him how I got a job at Gertrude's Pets, and I told him all about making friends with Miss Franny Block and getting invited to Sweetie Pie's party, and I told him about meeting Gloria Dump. Winn-Dixie lay on the floor, waiting for the preacher to leave so he could hop up on the bed like he always did. When I was done talking, the preacher kissed me goodnight, and then he leaned way over and gave Winn-Dixie a kiss too, right on top of his head. You can go ahead and get up there now, he said to Winn-Dixie. Winn-Dixie looked at the preacher. He didn't smile at him, but he opened his mouth wide like he was laughing, like the preacher had just told him the funniest joke in the world. And this is what amazed me the most. The preacher laughed back. Winn-Dixie hopped up on the bed, and the preacher got up and turned out the light. I leaned over and kissed Winn-Dixie too, right on the nose. But he didn't notice. He was already asleep and snoring. Chapter 11. That night, there was a real bad thunderstorm. But what woke me up wasn't the thunder and lightning. It was Winn-Dixie, whining and butting his head against my bedroom door. Winn-Dixie, I said, what are you doing? He didn't pay any attention to me. He just kept beating his head against the door and whining and whimpering. And when I got out of bed and went over and put my hand on his head, he was shaking and trembling so hard that it scared me. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around him, but he didn't turn and look at me or smile or sneeze or wag his tail or do any normal kind of Winn-Dixie thing. He just kept beating his head against the door and crying and shaking. You want the door open? I said. Huh? Is that what you want? I stood up and opened the door, and Winn-Dixie flew through it like something big and ugly and mean was chasing him. Winn-Dixie, I hissed, come back here. I didn't want him going and waking the preacher up, but it was too late. Winn-Dixie was already at the other end of the trailer in the preacher's room. I could tell because there was a spring sound that must have come from Winn-Dixie jumping up on the bed. And then there was a sound from the preacher like he was real surprised. But none of it lasted long because Winn-Dixie came tearing back out of the preacher's room, panting and running like crazy. I tried to grab him, but he was going too fast. Opal, said the preacher. He was standing at the door to his bedroom, and his hair was all kind of wild on top of his head, and he was looking around like he wasn't sure where he was. Opal, what's going on? I don't know, I told him. But just then there was a huge crack of thunder, one so loud that it shook the whole trailer, and Winn-Dixie came shooting back out of my room and went running right past me, and I screamed, Daddy, watch out! But the preacher was still confused. He just stood there, and Winn-Dixie came barreling right toward him like he was a bowling ball, and the preacher was the only pin left standing. And wham! They both fell to the ground. Uh-oh, I said. Opal, said the preacher. He was lying on his stomach, and Winn-Dixie was sitting on top of him, panting and whining. Yes, sir, I said. Opal, the preacher said again. Yes, sir, I said louder. Do you know what a pathological fear is? No, sir, I told him. The preacher raised a hand. He rubbed his nose. Well, he said after a minute, it's a fear that goes way beyond normal fears. It's a fear you can't be talked out of or reasoned out of. Just then, there was another crack of thunder, and Winn-Dixie rose straight up in the air like somebody had poked him with something hot. When he hit the floor, he started running. He ran back to my bedroom, and I didn't even try to catch him. I just got out of his way. The preacher lay there on the ground, rubbing his nose. Finally, he sat up. He said, Opal, I believe Winn-Dixie has a pathological fear of thunderstorms. And just when he finished his sentence, here came Winn-Dixie again, running to save his life. I got the preacher up off the floor and out of the way just in time. There didn't seem to be a thing we could do for Winn-Dixie to make him feel better, so we just sat there and watched him run back and forth, all terrorized and panting. And every time there was another crack of thunder, Winn-Dixie acted all over again like it was surely the end of the world. The storm won't last long, the preacher told me, and when it's over, the real Winn-Dixie will come back. After a while, the storm did end. The rain stopped, and there wasn't any more lightning. And finally, the last rumble of thunder went away, and Winn-Dixie quit running back and forth and came over to where me and the preacher were sitting and cocked his head like he was saying, What in the world are you two doing out of bed in the middle of the night? And then he crept up on the couch with us in this funny way he has, where he gets on the couch an inch at a time, kind of sliding himself onto it, looking off in a different direction, like it's all happening by accident, like he doesn't intend to get on the couch, but all of a sudden, there he is. And so the three of us sat there. I rubbed Winn-Dixie's head and scratched him behind the ears the way he liked. And the preacher said, There are an awful lot of thunderstorms in Florida in the summertime. Yes, sir, I said. I was afraid that maybe he would say we couldn't keep a dog who went crazy with pathological fear every time there was a crack of thunder. We'll have to keep an eye on him, the preacher said. He put his arm around Winn-Dixie. We'll have to make sure he doesn't get out during a storm. He might run away. We have to make sure we keep him safe. Yes, sir, I said again. All of a sudden, it was hard for me to talk. I loved the preacher so much. I loved him because he loved Winn-Dixie. I loved him because he was going to forgive Winn-Dixie for being afraid. But most of all, I loved him for putting his arm around Winn-Dixie like that, like he was already trying to keep him safe. All right. So I hope you all enjoyed chapters 10 and 11. And now we get to the written part of our assignment. This is where you get to show me what you've learned from our reading assignment. Today we're going to be talking about or working with main idea, and we have done main idea several times before. This is when you come up with the most important part of the story or of those 2 chapters that we just read, what do you think was the most important part from chapters 10 and 11? Now, you're not just going to pick any idea off the top of your head. You're going to analyze the text. And the way that we're going to do this is by using this ice cream cone as a guide for us. As you can see, this ice cream cone has 3 big scoops of ice cream and then the cone. The scoops of ice cream are going to represent a detail. So 1, 2, 3 details from those chapters. And then we're going to take those 3 details and kind of piece them together to see if we can decide what was the most important idea that these 3 details are trying to show us. So before you all get started with that, I am going to kind of go over an example. If we were doing the main idea plus 3 details from, let's say, the story Stone Fox, and just think about chapter 1. We should all be familiar with that story because we read it a few months ago, but you guys enjoyed it so much. I know that you have not forgotten about it. But let's just say I have to come up with the main idea for Stone Fox. So I need to figure out, just from chapter 1, 3 important details that I can remember that happened during that chapter. So I'm going to start off with my very first scoop of ice cream. And detail number 1 is going to be grandfather wouldn't get out of bed to make breakfast. So do you remember when Willie woke up, he was so used to grandfather already being awake and fixing him breakfast. But when he got up this particular morning, grandfather was not awake fixing breakfast. So that's going to be detail number 1, my first scoop of ice cream. Detail number 2, which is going to be my second scoop of ice cream, is grandfather wouldn't talk to Willie. So Willie and grandfather, because it was just those 2 in the house, were always having conversations. And this morning, even though grandfather wasn't out of bed, Willie thought for sure he would still be talking to him. But grandfather was not talking to Willie. So that's going to be ice cream scoop number 2. And finally, ice cream scoop number 3 that's going to be on top is going to be the detail that grandfather didn't play any of his usual pranks on Willie. So remember, they would play pranks on each other all the time. So this was a very eerie morning for Willie. He had no idea what was going on. Now, I'm going to take all 3 of those details. Grandfather wouldn't get out of bed to make breakfast. Grandfather wouldn't talk to Willie. And grandfather didn't play any of his usual pranks on Willie. And I'm going to take those 3 important details and put them together to come up with the main idea. How do these 3 details make me think about the most important thing that happened in the first chapter of Stone Fox? So basically, what the main idea is, just using those 3 details, is that something is seriously wrong with grandfather. Something is going on, but Willie doesn't know what. However, he's determined to find out what is happening to his grandfather and make everything go back to how it used to be. Now, before we get to chapter 2 and 3 and the rest, we have no idea what Willie's plan is. We don't know what he's going to do. So that's why I'm saying we're only going to work chapter by chapter. Because of Winn-Dixie, you guys are going to actually work with 2 chapters, chapters 10 and chapter 11. So that was just an example. So now what I want you to do on your own, of course you don't have this paper in front of you with the ice cream scoops, but that's okay because this was only to act as a guide for us. You all are going to actually write a paper with complete sentences. Please also do not forget your paragraphs. So every detail or every ice cream scoop can actually be a separate paragraph. All right, remember a paragraph should have at least 2 to 3 sentences. So we're going to do detail 1, detail 2, detail 3, and then we're going to use all of the information that we come up with to figure out what the main idea is. So that's going to be that bottom cone. So you all are going to write your paper, telling me 3 details that you remember from chapters 10 and 11 because of Winn-Dixie. I am including the pages here in this video so that in case you need to go back and reread to refresh your memory, that is absolutely fine. Come up with 3 important details. Don't just pick anything, any sentence that you see. Think about the story. Think about what was important. Write those details down in paragraph form. I want these in paragraph form. So make sure that you're writing at least 2 to 3 sentences per paragraph, letting me know what your details are. And then for the last paragraph, paragraph number 4, you're going to take all of that information and tell me what you think the main idea was. What was the most important thing that happened in chapters 10 and 11? If you have any questions, your parents can text me, call me, email me, and that should be it for this lesson. You guys have all week to complete this. So take, if I were you, I would maybe read 2 pages a day or maybe 3 pages a day and then work on it slowly but surely. So you could you can even do a paragraph a day because you have all week to work on this. We will not be having a new assignment uploaded for ELA until next Monday. All right, so hopefully, I think that's April 6th. Hopefully, you guys understand what the assignment is. I hope that you enjoyed the story, and I'm looking forward to reading your details and your main idea. Love you guys. Take care. See you talk to you next Monday.